Hi everyone, it's Dr. Steph, and I'm back again with part 3 of the Family Medicine Billing Made Simple series, specifically for faux physicians. So thank you for sticking around to the third part, where we are going to talk about income stabilization and the new grad entry program. So when you are graduating, you might have heard about what this is. So hopefully I'll give some information about this particular program and my thoughts on it as well. So for a new grad joining a faux that is starting out from scratch, so it's not like you're transferring a roster from an existing retiring faux doctor to you, you may not be eligible for the income stabilization program. So you can only get into this income stabilization program if you are starting out from scratch and you are starting to roster your own patients when you join a faux, for example. And if you don't have a lot of rostered patients yet, so generally speaking, 825 is about the magic number. So when you're kind of having less than that, you may not be making a lot in capitation. And so and plus you're also shadow billing, which is not very much of a percentage either. So in that regard, this income stabilization helps kind of, as it says, stabilize your income to a certain level that allows you to build up your practice. So basically, it is a guaranteed compensation rate for that 12 months when you're starting out in a fin or a faux type practice. And it'll guarantee that compensation for you as long as you are meeting the monthly rostering target. So remember, the eligibility criteria is that you have to practice in an area of high need, and you also have to provide at least 20 to 40 hours of comprehensive care within 3 years of your graduation, or if you have a minimum of 12 months of fee-for-service billing history and you haven't registered in a faux or a FIG previously to that. And you also have not been part of income stabilization before. So I talked a bit about those enrollment targets. So you get that set payment every year while you're building up your practice. And generally speaking, you want to commit to enrolling at least 825 patients. Once you enroll around that amount, then you can get off the income stabilization program and just become like a regular faux doctor, because by then your capitation payments and your billings would exceed the amount that you'll be getting from income stabilization. The enrollment targets that you have to meet to still be part of this program is that you have to enroll an average of 50 patients in each of the first 3 months, and then an average of 75 patients per month for the remaining period. This is not hard to do, especially given that so many patients don't have family doctors. So what counts as a patient in an enrollment to meet your enrollment target? So obviously they have to be new and unattached patients. You can't enroll someone else's patient because they've already been rostered to another doctor. Or you can enroll them if their past family physician retired, passed away, and so on. Or if that patient just moved completely to a new community and now they're out of the catchment area for their old family doctor. So yes, the patient has to be unattached or new. And another example of an unattached patient might be a newborn who is admitted to the NICU and hasn't been already enrolled, or if the patient was an acute care patient in hospital and within the last 3 months hasn't had any previous family physician. Now, if the patient has already a previous family physician, they just didn't want to be continuing with that family physician, they need to inform the family physician to de-roster that patient so that they're not attached to their old family physician and part of their roster. So how much would you expect to make when you are part of the income stabilization program? So basically, based on a pretty recent faux application package that I worked on, if you're working in an urban area, that comes up to be about $201,000 per year to be part of this program, which is actually pretty good if you are working as a full-time or one full-time equivalent is the equivalent of working 5 days a week, basically. And then if you are in a rural area, that comes about 220. From another resource that I used for this chart that I've linked down below where I took it from, the numbers are kind of similar as well. And depending on how many days a week that you work, that translates into a different full-time equivalent. So let's say a 3.5 days per week worked comes out to about 0.7 full-time equivalent, and then that translates into a bit lower compensation as well. So given that you are already compensated for services provided to your enrolled patients, what you bill for your enrolled patients usually will pay at zero because you're already making this kind of salary. But if you provide services to other patients that are not part of your income stabilization program, that aren't rostered to you, for instance, and those are paid at fee for service. So there isn't really like a cap on that. Even though what you bill is paid at zero, I still encourage you to bill because that's what allows you to keep track of encounters that you see. Now, there's another program that you may have heard about as well called the new Grad Entry Program. And usually in these talks, I try to provide very just technical information without my own opinion in it. But I don't actually think a lot of new grads should be joining this program. And I'll explain what this program is and why I say that. So what NGEP is basically, let's say you're starting out from scratch, and similar to income stabilization, you don't really have a lot of rostered patients yet to make good amount of capitation. You're also working in an area that's not really considered high need. So new grads can voluntarily join this program for their first 3 years when they're joining into a 𝗀 or a 𝗊. So likewise, similar to the previous income stabilization program, this is not a program if you are taking on a roster. It's just if you're starting to build your own roster. Now, with this program, I've put the screenshot of the compensation model for it. So it's not as much as income stabilization. So for, let's say, a full-time or a 1 FTE position, in the first year, you make about $162,000. But let's say you don't work 1 FTE. Let's say you work 0.7 FTE in your first year. Then that comes out to be a prorated annual compensation of $113,400. So in that regards, you are making a bit lower amount. But if you see other patients outside and that is billed as fee for service, then to compensate for that, the fee for service cap would then be increased by $48,600. And how I got that number was $162,000 here minus the $113,000 for your 0.7 FTE for a total fee for service cap of $83,600. And so all claims that you bill would be submitted through the 𝗊 or the 𝗀 for both your enrolled and non-enrolled patients. And those claims will be paid at zero because you're already getting paid kind of like a salary. Now, new participating NGEP physicians are really not able to benefit from any of the other 𝗀 bonuses, even though you're submitting these billings through a 𝗀, right? Through your 𝗀. You don't really get access to those premiums we talked about in part 1 of this lecture, bonuses, or any other incentives. But let's say if you're billing outside of the 𝗀, like you have some other walk-in clinic you're working in, or you're doing something else outside of that 𝗀 group, then those billings that you submit will be billed at fee for service. But remember how I talked about there being a fee for service cap? You can only bill those up to that cap. So the reason why I don't really like this program is because it can kind of be a bit restrictive on how much external stuff you can do and restrictive on how much income you can make in your first 3 years. So like I said before, it can be really restrictive because it can also be restrictive in terms of your monthly targets as well. So the monthly targets for your first year are quite high, actually. You have to try to get 825 patients in your first year. Then in your second year, you want to try to get at least 175 patients. And in year 3, you have to get at least 200 patients. So compared to income stabilization, this program might want you to enroll patients at a much faster rate, I guess. The other areas that it can be restrictive is the paperwork. You have to do practice improvement plans, and you also have to participate in mentorship as well. And these kind of seem like things that you have to do in residency as well, right? So it's kind of like doing all this extra paperwork, having to find a mentor as well. That is just additional work on top of what all the paperwork that you have to do already as a family doctor. So yes, I'm just presenting on this program just in terms of making the slides comprehensive, but personally, I do not really think this is a great program for a lot of new graduates. So if you have any other questions, feel free to leave a comment below. Feel free to check out any of the other family medicine billing talks, as well as any of the resident lectures in the playlist for more information. And feel free to reach out to me on any of the social media platforms. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for listening.